Okay, it is 2 o'clock and we have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. We have a couple of items on the agenda today that I think are going to take a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a few things out of order. And so I think most people have signed up for item number 6. Was there anybody that signed up for public comments? No. Okay, so nobody on public comments. No need for an executive session. What we're going to do is we're going to do 4, 5, and then 6 is going to move to the bottom of the list so that we can get the action items that we need to do and get those done, and then we'll go to the public hearing on the 2050 plan. So item number 4, do we have a report from the TAC?
I'll cover that, Chair Long, thank you. The Technical Advisory Committee met on March 24th, and action items at the meeting included election of officers for 2025. The TAC unanimously elected Chair Emily Barone from the City of Pflugerville and Vice Chair Richard Mendoza from the City of Austin. Nira Ved from CAMPO presented an action item on the 2025 performance measures targets, which is also on today's agenda. And following the presentation, the TAC unanimously approved a recommendation to the Policy Board to adopt the 2025 Performance Measure Report and Performance Measure Targets. And last, Williska, along with our consultant team, provided an update on the final draft 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, and covered recent revisions to the draft document, including comments from partner agencies and the timeline for remaining RTP activities. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Chad. Any questions from the TAC meeting? All right, thank you. So we will move on to item number 5, and I don't believe anybody signed up for that public hearing. Is that correct? Okay, so no one signed up for the public hearing on item number 5, so we will move on to item number 7, which is the discussion of that item.
I've got the presentation slides up in item 5, but thank you. And then the action item is in item 7. So this is a quick action option amendment. So quick action option amendments are significant changes to the Transportation Improvement Program. And we also make those changes, any changes that to the TIP are changed in the current Regional Transportation Plan as well. And so normally regular amendments or these significant changes go through our fall or spring amendment cycle. But for some external reason, oftentimes these regular amendment requests need to be processed rather quickly. And so quick action option amendment processes allow the Policy Board the flexibility to approve these significant changes in one meeting. And so this particular request from Cap Metro in coordination with the Federal Transit Administration, they've submitted a quick action option amendment request. This is to address new Federal Transit Administration listing requirements, as well as address a potential lapse of older operational funds that they receive from the Federal Transit Administration. So we have 9 requests. The 3 in the middle are really just splitting out a current listing in the Transportation Improvement Program, but the 3 on the top and the 3 on the bottom are older funds that are in previous Transportation Improvement Programs as far back as the 2021 to 2024 TIP, which was approved in May of 2020. And that's why we have to, so in conversations with the Federal Transit Administration, these projects and older funds need to be brought into the current Transportation Improvement Program. It's about $65 million that we need to move and bring those current so that Cap Metro can sign the grant agreement with the Federal Transit Administration. They're looking to do that in May, and so we need to have that approval at this Policy Board meeting so that we can submit it into the statewide Transportation Improvement Program where the authorization from FTA occurs. And that's the conclusion of the presentation. I'll take any questions and move it down to the recommendation, which is for the Policy Board to approve the quick action option amendment. Thank you.
Yeah. Just as a reminder, this is what we've discussed previously at our previous meeting. Is there a motion on item number 7? Motion to approve, second. Councilmember Fuentes and Siegel seconds. All right, so all in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item number 8, the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the February 10th meeting? Commissioner Inglesby, second, Mayor Houston. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Item number 9, discussion take appropriate action on 2025 federal performance measure targets.
Good afternoon, dear VED, Data and Operations Manager. In 2012 and 2016, Congress passed legislation mandating that state departments of transportation, MPOs, and transit organizations adopt what's known as a Transportation Performance Management System. And the reason that system was adopted was to ensure that the policy decisions that these agencies make and the investment decisions that they make match national priorities. CAMPO has a transportation performance management system through things like performance-based project selection criteria. We monitor the progress and impact of those investments, and we use our planning products such as the TIP and the plan. Also, what we do is we adopt regional targets, which is the item that we're here to discuss today. So the way it works is that Congress develops what's known as performance measure goal areas, which are the category there on the left, and then the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration develop goals and performance measures. Then it's up to the state DOTs, the NPOs, and the transit agencies to develop targets and then plans and programs that detail how those targets will be met. I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I'll say it again, is that CAMPO, just like every other MPO in the state, adopts TxDOT's targets only due to the financial resources and the human resources that it takes to develop your own targets, which are basically beyond our capabilities. So just like every other MPO of the state, we adopt the state's targets. And these are those performance measures. There's 25 over 5 categories. The columns on the left are the names of the performance measure, and the column on the right are the actual performance targets. The numbers inside the parentheses are last year's targets, and the number outside are the current year targets. As you can see, overwhelmingly, the numbers have stayed the same from last year to this year. And this is not the only way. That slide that you just saw of how we monitor performance measures, we have a website on the CAMPO website. We have a dashboard that kind of shows a more dynamic version of how the regions, not only the region's goals, but how we perform against those goals.
And just a shout out to that dashboard. If folks haven't gotten on there and used it, it's very informative, and I'd encourage you to go look at it.
Thank you. And finally, staff and the Technical Advisory Committee recommend the Transportation Policy Board adopt the 2025 Performance Measure Report and targets. And thank you. That's I'll look forward to any questions or comments.
Is there a motion? Okay, I'll move approval. Is there a second? Second. All right, second. Oh, from the guy walking in. All right, there's a motion and a second on item number 9. Any discussion?
Thank you. Colleagues, I think we've discussed this previously when considering adopting our performance measures, the distinction between adopting the TxDOT statewide targets versus ones that are specific to our region. And can staff share where we landed on that? Because I know we've talked about this before, whether we should have performance-based targets based on our region versus statewide.
So, Council Member, where we landed on that was essentially where we are right now. So for us, the option under federal law is we can go with what the state does, or we can adopt our own. If we adopt our own, we also have to come up with the data to support that decision. And so right now, if you look at the safety data that TxDOT provides to us, It's collected from every police organization within the region. If we did it, we'd have to go out to each one on our own and collect all that data and process it. The cost of it would be incredible, and it really wouldn't be any different than what TxDOT already gives us and processes for us for free. So that's the reason we're using the TxDOT numbers.
Gotcha. Okay, so just for the record, we're adopting the TxDOT standards as a cost savings measure.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, but they're also good standards. I mean, they're good guidelines and good targets. Yes, Councilmember.
Coming on.
There's no light.
Okay, all right. I wanted to mention that I also have concerns around this. I can definitely understand the reasons for adopting those TxDOT measures, but for what I see on the ground in daily life in the northern suburbs of Austin, I see a lot of safety considerations. I'm quite concerned about it, and I would like to find some forum to bring forward discussion and action and just data that will see whether we're meeting the needs right here in our region. So if it's not by adopting that standard here, is there another way that we can bring those concerns forward for consideration regionally?
So one of the things, well, several of the things we're doing, Councilmember Lane, so even though we're adopting the TxDOT standard on this, we as CAMPO staff do a number of safety-related studies that are particular to this region, and those studies also come in for this board to adopt. So, for example, right now we're working on a regional safety action plan. So in this case, it does not cover Austin because Austin got its own federal grant for that, but it covers the other 5 counties outside. But also we've got a freight study that has a freight component to it. We have a regional active transportation plan that has a heavy safety component to it. And all of that is data from here.
So, I'm sorry.
Does it cover the ETJ areas?
Yes, it covers everything.
Well, it doesn't cover Austin. Does it cover the Austin ETJ?
Oh, I'm sorry, you mean the Regional Safety Action Plan? So in this case, no, because Travis County also got its own federal grant, so Travis County is covering the...
So is Williamson County covering the ETJ areas that are in Williamson County? This is kind of why I'm raising it, because this area is weaving in and out of all these jurisdictions, and we need a mechanism to kind of look across them at the transit needs. And I know I'm really new here, and I know it's a lot of words, but is this the regional body to consider that?
It is, and the example I'm giving you of the Regional Safety Action Plan is a bit of an outlier. Normally, it's not split up like that. Usually, we cover everything at once, but this particular federal grant, that was a discretionary grant. We applied and got a grant. So did Travis County. So did City of Austin. And normally, it's just one grant.
Would this be a body where it makes sense to look at the overall picture, since that's all piecemeal?
It does, and all 3 of us, we're working together on our individual studies. We're not in silos.
So I just want to make sure we're clear, because I want to make sure words do matter. So let's have a conversation about what we're articulating. Mayor Pro Tem conveyed the fact that we're doing this as a cost-saving measure. I don't think necessarily that was the case. I think that the case was that we were looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, this was years ago, we were looking at a baseline understanding standard for us to utilize and leverage. Then what happened is that the state came with their specific action plan. We said, okay, listen, we don't have enough information yet to go ahead and formulate that, and their standard is good, and we can use that as a minimum standard, and there's that we can build on top of that. From there, we started to articulate that we need to go ahead and a safety action plan, which included law enforcement and all those other mechanisms that we had in place with that. So then after that, the entities went after various different grants, which included Travis County, which included Austin, which included the remaining parts of the region of CAMPO. And consequently with that, we had a meeting where we said explicitly, are you working together on this, so we make sure that all our information, our data points are actually compiled together and juxtaposed and worked in concert with one another, as opposed to who's on first, like the council member saying over there from there. And you said exactly that. So I think that for our purposes, we are trying to articulate a standard that's necessary to do that, to include the ETJ, because I think you bring up a really good point. ETJ folks often feel like they're left out of the loop when it comes to these conversations. Additionally speaking, I think that again, having this rubric in place as a baseline and starting to build from that and something that we can go ahead and utilize and move forward on, something stand for ourselves, that's something that we can aspire to. I think that we're still in the nascent period with that, but it doesn't mean that we're doing that because, dude, it's going to save us money, or dude, it's cheaper or quicker that way.
All right, any other, Amy?
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question. It could be a typo, but I thought I might ask to see if it matters. I pulled up the 2024 performance measures that we adopted, and under the PM1, the 5-year rolling average number of fatalities, it's 3046, which matches the targets. It looks like this year our 5-year rolling average target that we would be adopting, or it's increasing by 500 to 3567. Is there a reason why the TxDOT 5-year rolling average number has moved up so much?
That could be a typo. I'll have to look into that because, we just take the numbers. So there's a possibility that that might have been left over from like a previous year. So that is something I'll need to do some examination of. But 3046 is the target that was provided to us by TxDOT. That is the number that we are adopting.
So just to clarify, the 5-year rolling isn't what we're targeting to, or we're targeting to the target, but you can come back and let us know whether that was a typo.
The target's 3046. And I'm assuming that 5-year rolling average, if it's 5 years, it takes in higher numbers from previous years.
Well,
we just don't see that right there.
Last year's 5-year rolling average was 3046, and this year's it's 3567. So it's a pretty big jump without more information about how that 5-year average got moved up in the last year.
Right, and again, I don't know where that 3567, because I thought I double checked, but obviously not. But 3046 is the target number because those are the numbers that were given to us from TxDOT back in December.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a quick question. It's my understanding there's been an issue of resources for monitoring, and I was wondering if that could be a conversation that we bring up, for the Unified Planning Work Program, which this body will take up in June.
I'm sorry, monitoring what, sir?
I understand there's an issue of resources for monitoring, so I was wondering if that could be a conversation we bring up in June.
So it could be Councilman Kadri, but that conversation might be more appropriate when the board opens up the call for projects for surface transportation block grant funding for Category 7.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is mainly what's in the Unified Planning Work Program document that you're going to see from us in June. That's mostly what's called Planning 112 federal money. And right now we get about a little over $2 million for that, and we're spending over $2 million because that's salaries, it's insurance, it's rent, it's all those things. And so there's not anywhere near enough of that to do what we're talking about for that. But if the board wanted to give us Category 7, perhaps that could be something. And then the UPWP could be amended.
Thank you. I would like consideration for that, and I think that's what we as a regional policy planning board would like to see, are metrics and standards established for our region. And we keep having this conversation about doing it on a regional base. I know that, Ashby, you just confirmed that it's a matter of resources why we adopt the Texas statewide standards versus creating ones that are based on our region. But if there is an opportunity for us to get the funding necessary to have local data to establish regional metrics, then I would like us to move forward, because if not, we're going to be here next year, same conversation, and we're going to be retreading the same issue. It seems like there is support on the board for us to establish these by a regional way, so I'm not following why we aren't moving forward in that manner.
So I think perhaps because this has come up several times, let's get an estimate on what it would take for the board to do it within our limited budget, of figuring out what that estimate would be to do that on our own. But for the sake of this, are there any other questions pertinent to Tucker?
not a question, but a comment. I just want to explain the data that we pulled. Our crash system, our statewide crash system, has every law enforcement report that is written, both on-system crashes and off-system crashes. So if a law enforcement officer writes a report, whether it's a fatal or a non-injury crash or everything in between, goes into our database. And then we have the ability to slice and dice that and analyze it from causative factors, location, county, rainy days, dark hours, every category imaginable that's filled out on that form, we can tabulate that and run reports. So that needs to be the baseline of what's available in the information that we pull compared to what we may ask CAMPO to do. So I want that to be known, that it's a very robust system and really is the baseline of data if we think we can take a look at it with CAMPO and get more information out
And
of it.
that's a good point, Tucker, because right now the form that's used by the officers was developed for the state, and it automatically goes to the state to be processed. They have no relationship with us. And so we will have to go out and, one, establish all these relationships, and then create a form, and then create the data and process
I mean, it'd be recreating
what's already done.
So, Mayor, you had a
Yeah, and this is just, and I managed to dump my coffee on my computer, so maybe you guys have covered this, and apologies if you have. But is there maybe a distinction here between the standards and the data that TxDOT is collecting along with Texas law enforcement, which I don't think any of us are here saying we should count our own numbers in our own way, but the targets, like why don't we get to set our own targets with that data? Or is it like set in stone that the target has to be 3,046 fatalities for next year?
So I think that's a good point. We're two ships passing the night, right? Because I think you're exactly right. I think that we understand what the baseline threshold is right there. So then what we'd ultimately, so I guess what we'd be looking at is that what we do have to be looking at to compute standards that would be applicable, analogous to our specific region based on the baseline information that we've already retained from there. That's probably a better fix than trying to reinvent the wheel on that.
But I want to let Nero speak, because you look like you were ready to say something.
I think you know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So, okay, without that, we will look at that. What I want to make sure is that the law allows that flexibility.
Yeah.
And the 3,046 is a statewide number. It's not a regional number.
Because
It's a
my
statewide
interpretation
number.
of what it says is, we can either take the state number as it is, or if we don't take it, we have to go the other full route. There's no in between.
Okay, that's a really important distinction. Okay, so you're saying the
So I'll
state
check
may
the law.
explicitly say,
Yeah.
dude, take what we got, or screw it, you have to do it yourselves.
That's the way the federal law is
Okay.
written, basically.
Okay.
But
The
I think,
feds,
but
not
let
the
me.
Oh, the feds, yeah.
Let me
Not-
check
yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah, so we'll verify that. Commissioner, you had a question.
I guess as a representative of one of the smaller counties, I'd be interested in Ashby, and I think you've already said that too, giving us the logistics of doing what you're being asked to do, and then understanding, I guess, better the impact that might have on project submittals and scoring and those types of issues.
Okay, we can certainly do that, and just for reference for today, so if you look at the existing project selection criteria for the Transportation Improvement Program, there is criterion in there today that has safety baked into the criteria, and it's actually one of the biggest things you can get in the criteria. So it's laced throughout, not just on the roadway side, but also on transit, also on bike ped categories. So it's laced throughout the criteria.
Okay, so we'll come back with more information.
Yes.
But there's a motion and a second on the floor to adopt what's been presented today. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, let's see. Item number 10, discuss potential and take action to authorize Ashby to negotiate the regional transportation demand management contract. I'll move approval on that. Second, Commissioner Inglesby. Any discussion on that? The full information was in your packet. All right, question?
Yeah, I have some, it's on. Okay, I just have a few questions. What type of reporting should we expect from Malta? I'm not sure which way I should be looking, but.
So the way contracts are negotiated, that there is a number of reporting requirements that we have with TxDOT, including a monthly summary of activities that they do. In the scope, there's also a request for doing what's known as, basically a survey of how our travel patterns affected by the program that we're going to implement. Those are the two major reporting requirements out of what ALTA is doing, but most of it's not going to be studying. This is an implementation program, so we're going to be actually going out there to do the strategies that have been laid out in the work that had been done over the past couple of years under the previous TDM contract. Mm-hmm. And I know you're new to the board, so I can provide you that implementation report. No problem.
Okay, great. And then I had another question. How will the consultant engage? So this is more about feedback. How will the consultant engage, with the region, receive feedback to the work that's going on?
How will the consultant engage?
Yeah.
So the way they have, in terms of who they're going to engage with?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
engagement, yeah.
When they're here, they've engaged with the elected officials, they've engaged with the TAC members, they've engaged with the general public, they've engaged with the employers, travelers, just basically anybody who moves in and out of this region, they need to engage with them.
Okay. And I'm sorry, and maybe you answered it, but how will they receive the feedback? It'll just be through direct communication?
So there's a number of ways.
Okay.
You could do focus groups,
yeah.
You could do interviews, you could do polling or surveys, one-on-one interviews. They've pretty much done it.
Got it.
Through, and we've done, basically as something as simple as standing in while people are waiting in line and handing them a survey and asking them to fill out a questionnaire.
Okay, got it. And then my last question, is there a way we could go about restarting the TDM subcommittee to help support the work?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be number one on the list when we get started, yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, most people don't remember because it was before the pandemic, but we were studying TDM and doing TDM, looking at those opportunities literally back in 2018, 2019. Commissioner Shea was actually one of the people who were highly regarded with that. Then after the pandemic, it went on steroids and everything else. But now that we're having people, particularly, and this is something I want to take into consideration now, a lot of state employees, as of March 31st, are back in person. How does that affect? What does that look like? What do our numbers affect on those things right there? Because I know school pool and some other things that we have done that we've piloted with other folks out there have had huge impacts and they've made a big difference. I'm guessing we're going to be having more folks and more opportunities to try to see how we actually lessen that traffic on the roads because it's a serious issue. It's an issue that I'm impressed that this body has tried to address for a long time now, and I'm glad to see actually this contract moving forward and we actually implement and do something about it.
And one of the things that we're going to do in response to that suggestion about the state workers. So before the pandemic hit and folks weren't really teleworking, we were going to reach out to Joyce and I always forget the name. Is it the Facilities Commission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were going to reach out to them, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody started teleworking. So we didn't have to. Now we'll go back to reaching out to the Facilities Commission.
All right. Seeing no other questions on that, there's a motion and second on that one. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that was item number 10. All right. Ryan, you get a quick presentation on 11, and then we're going to circle back to item number 6.
Sorry about that. I was
I
walking.
know I'm making you jump around in the slides. Sorry, we're on 11.
So item 11, so this is the 5310 program. This is an information item. So this is a project call that we are currently doing, and we're actually wrapping up. So the FTA 5310 program is a small funding pot from the Federal Transit Administration, and it provides funding specifically for transportation programs that serve seniors and individuals with disability. And so Cap Metro is the designated recipient of 5310 funding, and they also administer the program. And then CAMPO, we have an agreement, excuse me, Cap Metro has an agreement with CAMPO where we do the project selection process, and then y'all do the project approval. So this program funding, there's a distinction I need to make between traditional capital projects. So the majority of the funding that we have is for traditional capital projects such as vehicle purchase and support infrastructure for those mobility programs. And then there's also operating expenses. And so I'm bringing that up because it does impact what we can allocate. We are required to spend a minimum of 55% on traditional capital projects and a maximum of 45% on operating expenses. And so that does impact availability. I would say this is an older program. It's been around since the late 70s, and these caps have existed since then. But over time, the majority of the need in this program is typically for operational expenses, and so that's the majority of the requests that we do receive. So the schedule, we opened the project call earlier this year and closed it, the application time period in mid-March. We are finalizing the technical review and scoring of the applications this week, and then we'll be taking it to the Technical Advisory Committee later this month, and then we'll bring it back in May to the Policy Board for potential approval of the project selection and recommendation. And so funding availability, we have approximately $6 million with which is available for the projects. $2.5 million is available for the other operating expenses type of requests, and then $3.5 million for traditional requests. So just to remind everyone, the evaluation process, we do check eligibility on all the projects that are submitted. They do have to serve the Austin urbanized area. And then eligible sponsors include nonprofits and local government agencies. And again, the activity can either be traditional or operating expenses. We do a readiness evaluation. We thoroughly evaluate the budget. We look at the timeline and schedule for expenditures. And then we do make sure that the project sponsors are in good standing. A lot of these sponsors are resubmitting from year after year, and we provide those operational expenses. And so we do make sure before we award them additional funding that they have spent down the funding that they received last time. And then on the right, we have our scoring criteria that we use to evaluate the projects. And so where we're shaping up, so we had 9 submissions. You can see the sponsors on the left-hand side. And then we, for a total of about $4.1 million in funding requests. Where it gets kind of critical, and I'm bringing up CARTS in particular, we have their requests listed in other. We're hoping we can move that over to the traditional and categorize that. We're clarifying that with the Federal Transit Administration. And the reason I'm bringing that one up in particular, that if we can move that over to traditional, we will have enough funding available to fund all of the requests that were submitted. We are finalizing the scores again this week and the ranks, and I do want to point out that regardless of funding availability, the recommendation is going to be based on the project scores and ranks. We do want to make sure that these are still good projects. Just because we have the funding available doesn't mean that it necessarily means we need to recommend it, and so we have to make sure that all of these projects are good projects worthy of being recommended for funding. It's looking like that's the way it's going to shape up, but we're just doing our due diligence and our QA/QC currently, and we'll bring that recommendation back to the Policy Board next month. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ryan, for that update, and we'll look forward to the vote in May.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are going to go back to item number 6, which is the public hearing on the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. And I've had about 20-plus people sign up, so we're going to take 2 minutes each for your comments. And I will call your name, and then I'll call several names. So if you'll get, the podium's right over here under that exit sign. So when you hear your name or your name called, if you'll come and kind of stand in line so we can move through this relatively expeditious or orderly, and then we'll get through those. And we appreciate your cooperation and you being here today. All right, so the first one is Jim McClintock. And then Karen I'm going to mess up your last name. So apologies in advance. If I mess up your name, please forgive me. It starts with an H, Karen H., and then Frank Thiel after that. So if you folks will line up, you have 2 minutes, and if you're repeating something somebody else has said, if you want to just say what Joe said, that's fine too. All right, there's a little light over here that you can see on the table, and it will go to yellow when you're almost finished and red when your time's up. I'll also have a timer right here that you'll be able to hear as well. Okay, so Jim, go ahead. Your time begins now.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, members of CAMPO. My name is Jim McClintock. I'm one of the co-founders of the United Neighbors of 1826. By the way, you also have a handout that's in front of you that's the one with the map, and everything that we address is going to be encapsulated in that. I'll be followed by 4 members of our affiliation, and we will speak on separate and pertinent pieces of the rural road. I underline rural road. We represent 7 homeowners associations and individual property owners along that 1826 area. That's over 6,700 homes and 20,000 voters. 1826 is located in the southwest corner of Travis County, and we're here to persuade you to remove our 4.4-mile section of 1826, stretching from 290 in the north to 45 in the south, from the constrained list. It's about $70 million, and it's in the RTP 2050 plan, ID 150-194-00. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. All right, next we have is it Karen, did I say that?
Karen Hipsman.
Okay, Karen, let me get my timer reset here. All right, go ahead.
My name is Karen Hipsman. I represent Circle C HOA and the United Neighbors of 1826. Crash analysis shows 0 fatalities north of SH45 at the 1826 intersection. This proposed project is not justified by TxDOT's crash data. The 2045 traffic models predicted worsening congestion, with the 2022 counts predicted to double by 2025. However, actually the 2024 and 2025 counts show no growth. For 92% of the road and drives, 1826 is the only outlet. Only 15% of the traffic on 1826 is pass-through traffic. This project will only hurt neighbors and local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Frank, and then Elizabeth Cubberly, and then Carrie Wolf after that. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Frank Thiel, and along with Jim and Karen and Elizabeth and Carrie, I'm part of the United Neighbors of 1826, which we formed as a group when this 1826 project was started. I also live along 1826. There's a significant negative impact to both the community and the environment if this project were to proceed as planned. This portion of the road runs through both the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone and the Mary Gay Maxwell Water Protection Lands, the Slaughter Creek Preserve, as it's also called. The proposed roadway is divided. 1826 right now is just a 2-lane road. The proposed roadway is a divided highway with a raised median and restricted left turns. It will take 34 acres from over 190 properties to change the road. Most of that land is water quality protected land and also private homesteads. A lot of those homesteads may have their septic fields and their wells impacted by the increased footprint of the road. And that can even take some properties below the rule for no less than 1 acre per septic field. So we're asking to please remove this from the constrained list. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Elizabeth, then Carrie, and then Liz Bermel. Go ahead.
Howdy. My name is Elizabeth Cubberly, and I'm also a part of the United Neighbors of 1826, and I would personally like to address the emergency access and evacuation. So if this is a divided, limited to no left turn highway, that means the emergency responders will have a very difficult time getting to us. They will have to bypass our street by miles and minutes just to get to us. That could be the difference in life and death. The other issue that I'd like to take up and address is evacuation. There's a greater than 50% statistical likelihood that we would evacuate toward the danger if we are only able to turn right because of the divided, no left turn highway. If that's the case, whether it's fire or flood, we're headed toward it and not away from it. And I think it's really important for us to note that in Central Texas, we're the 5th most wildfire-prone region in the entire United States. And all remaining top 10 happen to be in California. So do please consider to remove this from the constrained list. And thank you, and I'd like to introduce Carrie, our closer.
Thank you. Carrie, you're next, and then Liz, and then Bill Brock.
Hi, I'm Carrie Wolf. I am a right-of-way property owner directly impacted by the proposed widening of RM 1826 in Travis County. As you have already heard from the rest of the United Neighbors of 1826, we believe this project does not meet the stated goals of improving safety or mobility. We appreciate that TxDOT has chosen to pause this project, and we request that CAMPO take similar action by removing it from the constrained list. We want to sincerely thank TxDOT for the significant improvements that they have already made to this roadway, especially the addition of multiple new turn lanes. These upgrades have already improved mobility, and TxDOT's own crash data shows a meaningful reduction in incidents. As residents, we feel safer today as a result of these efforts. We thank you for your time. Please remove this project from the constrained list. We are the United Neighbors of 1826.
Thank you, Carrie. Next, we have Liz, and then Bill Brock, and then Bobby starts with an L. Yes. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Bermel, and I'm a registered nurse in a busy emergency department in Hays County. I am here speaking in defense of my patients and the frontline healthcare workers who care for them every day. Our air quality is not acceptable. It is not meeting the EPA standards. According to a study published by the World Health Organization in February of 2020, 9 million people die annually, prematurely, from the effects of air pollution. We are talking about increases in stroke, heart attack, miscarriage, and death from all causes. We have not even gotten into the high-speed accidents that occur on highways daily. High speed means high risk. These lead to deaths and permanent disability. I have seen horrors that you could not possibly understand just by watching the local news. I would encourage you to go out into your communities and ask people about their experiences, because their stories are not mine to tell. And when you do, hold space, listen to their pain, and ask yourself the question I face every single shift. How do you comfort someone whose life has changed forever? We can't undo the past, but we can prevent future suffering. Better access to public transit leads to fewer deaths and injuries. The benefits of increased activity that come from cycling and walking are indisputable. And the increase in the sense of community from cycling and walking, or from talking to your neighbor on a bus, helps you deal with the ups and downs.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next we have Bill, and then Bobby, and then Christiana after that.
Well, I'm not Bill Brock. I'm Randy Johnston, and I'm representing Bill. Bill had to leave. I'm representing the 1826 Hays County Coalition, and it was good to hear the folks from over here from Travis County, because what we're here today is, I've come and spoke a couple of times to y'all before, is that we're asking for the Hayes County portion of 1826 expansion to be moved ahead of the Travis County 1826 because the bottleneck on 1826 is not in Travis County. It starts from where 45 comes into 1826 and goes south down into Driftwood and Dripping Springs. That's where the bottleneck is. So, you know, my situation is you look at where the bottleneck is and you try to eliminate that bottleneck and work back, where you're not creating the bottleneck up in Travis County. Where we are, we're going to have more growth out there. The Travis County area is pretty much built out. You don't see any more expansion plans pretty much there. But where we are, there's still a lot of areas that can be expanded. There's still, and that's where, you know, today, if you turn off a 45 on the 1826 at 4 o'clock, you're probably going to be backed up 4 miles on a 2-lane road with, you know, nowhere to pass, nowhere to go. And, you know, I personally have had a very good friend of mine pass away in a car accident out there on the 2-lane road. And so then the expansion to the 4-lane roads with the medias and all, we're welcoming because we've got some serious, you know, concerns out there as far as the traffic flow and the growth and what we need to do. And I think Travis County is welcoming and is wanting us to move ahead of there in the budgeting process, and that's what we're asking to do, is try to get us moved ahead of Travis County with our expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Bobby, and then Christiana, and then Alexandra. Go ahead.
Thank you, board members. My name is Bobby Levinsky. I'm an attorney with the Save Our Springs Alliance. Today, my focus is going to be on how we can collaborate regionally from Hayes to Williamson, from Burnett to Bastrop, to create a shared vision for our region's future. We need to improve this long-range transportation planning process for that to happen, to reduce the congestion, to improve safety, to expand our commuter options, and protect our environmental resources. I would encourage you to, in addition to adopting this plan when it comes before you, include some policy directions so that we can make the process better moving forward. That would include improving the modeling, updating the project scoring, and incorporating more comprehensive environmental mitigation strategies. I would encourage you to look at the San Antonio AMPO plan for their chapter on environmental mitigation. That's a federal requirement, and it's much more robust. It acknowledges that we have an aquifer and that roads have impacts on water quality and our air quality. Our current modeling presents two extremes: build everything or build nothing. We need strategic planning to explore focused investments, such as prioritizing local roads over highways to match the new post-pandemic normal, where people are commuting closer to home and not commuting as longer distances particularly on Mondays and Fridays, and they have more flexibility in their commute, so they're not using rush hour as much as possible, like we used to. And then I'd also encourage that we enhance our intercity rail for safer options for families, like the 75% of San Marcos residents that commute for work. SOS helped facilitate the submission of over 421 comments for this plan opposing the proposed expansion of MOPAC South, and that's in addition to the 1,500 comments that we submitted through the open house process that concluded in January. It doesn't have local support. The expansion raises significant environmental concerns to its location over the recharge zone and its proximity to Barton Springs.
Appreciate it. Your time's up. All right, next we have Christiana, Alexandra, Miguel. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christiana Ellis. I live in San Marcos, and I work here in Austin. I work in North Austin, so it's about an hour drive. 4 years ago when I started, it wasn't an hour drive. It was about 45 minutes. And even though the 2 lanes were added, it actually increased my commute time. I'm bringing this up because this is going to happen every time we add a lane, every time we prioritize highways. So I'm asking to prioritize different modes of transportation. For example, in San Marcos, we have the bus that goes to Austin. That bus is beautiful and clean and amazing. And then I get to Austin, and it's too difficult to ride the bus here. Even though I'm right next to a bus stop, it doesn't make any sense for me to take the bus to Austin. My goal of this is just to tell you that we oppose 35 expansion, and also we want to make sure that the Austin Railway from San Antonio to Austin is on the forefront of your minds, and also planning for it. I'm part of the San Marcos Equity Transportation Cabinet in San Marcos, and we are doing a lot of planning for the future for transportation. That includes a lot of very small details, and we're working through those details together, and we're making sure that our voices are heard all across San Marcos. And since we are part of a suburb of Austin, I figured our voices should also be heard here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Alexandra, Miguel, and then Julie after. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Sivilov, and I'm a resident of Austin, Texas, and I'm speaking today about the RTP. When I think of a comprehensive regional transportation plan, I envision the use of all modes of transportation being available to the residents of the CAMPO region. I have family and friends all over these different counties in Lockhart, Buda, Georgetown. And currently, the only way I can really get to those places is to drive by car. So I think that increasing the different ways, access of transportation, like the San Antonio to Austin train, and then more buses and local transportation improvement would give me and others the opportunity to visit those cities and attend events in those towns without overwhelming their parking infrastructure. And improving local, and on the opposite end, I'd like to reduce the proportion of funds spent on roadway expansion. While road maintenance is necessary, I do not think that I-35 expansion has enough benefits to outweigh the damage that it causes. I live near Breaker and I-35, and lately it's been feeling very unsafe to drive on 35. In that construction zone, there have been a lot of accidents, and I think that the roadway should be safe even during construction, and and I also have to worry about the general air and noise quality issues from I-35, and when the road expands, that will only be exacerbated. To summarize, I think we should increase funding and projects for other modes of transportation, for all modes of transportation, not just expansion.
Thank you. All right, next we have Miguel, then Julie, and then Amy. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Miguel Colon. I've been living in the greater Austin area for more than 10 years, for more than a decade. Even though I live in Williamson County in Round Rock, I consider myself an Austinite, and I consider Austin my home. One thing that I would really like to see an improvement on is inner city and even inner county public transport. It's really easy to go from one city to another in a car, but if I needed to catch a bus to Round Rock, I need to go out of my way to find a train or find a bus route to Round Rock. And even if I take the train, I still have to walk on a service road that has no, there's no way to like use that service road other than a car. A service road, Texas prides itself on service roads and how abundant they are. But to me, I feel like those are, that's more of a prioritization of cars and the business that cars have than really the use of a service road where I need to walk on the side of the road with no pavement just to get to my house. That's where I need to commute to from Austin to Round Rock or Round Rock to Austin. It makes it very difficult. I'd like you guys to consider not just like roadway safety and like safety around roadways, but also transportation across inner city, inner county lines, and also Other ways of transportation, like Alexandra said, especially us in Rethink 35, we want to rethink the entire like I-35 project.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Julie, and then Amy, and then Robin. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Julie Alpers, and we're back to 1826, guys. I live in Bear Creek Estates. And just to make sure that you guys know what we're talking about, can all the CAMPO members, can you raise your hand if you've driven out to Salt Lick Barbecue? So not everyone knows what we're talking about. We're a rural road about 12 miles long, and you're in a rare occasion where everyone's in agreement except for, I guess, TxDOT, because our folks from Travis County do not want it widened. I live in Hayes County, and those of us in Hayes County do want it widened. So all we're asking is that you flip the calendar and start developing and widening 1826, because we're where all the development happens. Hayes County is where the crashes happen, and it's where the deaths are happening. I mean, as you mentioned, there have been no fatalities in Travis. We have had fatalities south of 45, and you guys, there are going to be more. Because taking a left turn out of my community is a death-defying event if you go during school hours. So please consider swapping the timeline. That's all we're asking. Develop the Hayes County section of 1826 before you widen the Travis County section. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we have Amy, and then Robin, and then Ben. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy DeLuna. I have several comments on different parts of the CAMPO 2050 plan, but for the next couple of minutes, I want to speak on safety. I read in the RTP that using 2023 data, quote, while alcohol-related crashes make up less than 7% of all crashes in the capital area, they are responsible for over 27% of fatalities, end quote. I wondered why people are drinking and driving in the first place. Then I think about how car-dependent our transportation system is. If it was easy and convenient for people to have a few drinks and not drive, imagine how much we could reduce alcohol-related crashes and fatalities caused by those crashes. I reviewed the RTP project list, and I see several projects that call for safety improvements on roads and funding for active transportation projects and regional transit projects. I'm happy to see those kinds of projects. However, I also see several unsafe projects, namely roadway expansions that will lead to more cars being on the road and an increase in vehicle miles traveled. I am aware that safety factors account for 20 to 30% of the project prioritization score, depending on the project type, for projects in the RTP. I want to see CAMPO place more emphasis on safety through the way projects are scored and through the types of projects y'all fund. Public transportation, like bus and rail, are significantly safer modes of transportation. Instead of investing billions of dollars in expanding highways throughout the region, invest more in transit and active transportation projects. The RTP says a lot of nice things about safety, transit, and active transportation, but the way projects are scored, the kinds of projects that are funded, there's little weight behind those words. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Robin, and then Ben, and after Ben, we have Kara. Go ahead, Robin.
Hi there. My name is Robin Wetherill. I'm not part of any organization, but I did hear of this meeting through Rethink 35, so thanks y'all for making us aware of this. I live in Anderson Mill, and I work in the Arboretum. My goal here is to underline the support and need for more public transportation. I have 3 motivations for this. I'm an environmental scientist, I have epilepsy, and I grew up in the Houston during the I-10 expansion, which was a nightmare. In the project maps I've seen here, I am concerned about the relatively small amount of work towards increasing public transportation, even though we do have Project Connect that should be ongoing, capital metro improvements, and I'd just like to see better public transportation in the greater Austin area anyway. So, like I mentioned, I have intractable epilepsy, which does not respond to medication. I was diagnosed in 2011, and I haven't been able to drive since then, for good reason. I can function in society, I can work, I can take part in community, but this inability to drive, it hinders a lot. That's one of many reasons why we really need to improve public transportation in this area. Even to come to this meeting today, my office is at the Arboretum. It's a 5-minute drive away. You basically can't walk here. I was driving along with someone, and the sidewalk stops. It would have been a 35-minute walk. The fact that we're so close and it's so difficult to get around, I think we can do better than this. We are a growing city. I understand we do need infrastructure to keep up with this growth. But again, I grew up in Houston. I remember the Katy Freeway when they were expanding. It's full again. Traffic is a nightmare again. So I urge us to think about all of the different options that we have. And thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robin. Next is Ben, and then Kara, and then Anna.
Hello, CAMPO board members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm representing Common Sense today, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on the current draft of the CAMPO 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Here's why. At a time when Central Texas is already facing unprecedented environmental stress, shrinking aquifers, polluted waterways, record heat, and wildfire risk, we simply cannot afford to keep doubling down on sprawl and pavement. This plan proposes a 26% expansion in regional road capacity, yet it offers zero plans for environmental mitigation. Let me say that again. No mitigation for air, water, wildlife, or rural communities that would be sacrificed. From Mopac South to RM 620 from US 290 to Fitzhugh Road, these proposed expansions carve up critical watersheds and wildlife corridors, threatening places like Barton Springs, Edwards Aquifer, which needs protection. It needs our protection, where thousands of us swim, drink, and find solace. These are irreplaceable ecosystems home to endangered species, working farms, and the soul of this region. I understand that growth is happening, but we urge you to lead with vision, not inertia. More lanes do not mean less traffic. We've seen this story before. More roads mean more cars, more emissions, and more sprawls. Instead of a 25-year bet on more asphalt, let's invest in smarter solutions, regional transit, workable communities, bike infrastructure, and conservation of open space. Let's work with our precious land, not against it. This project is particularly harmful to the Barton Springs watershed and offers no meaningful relief to congestions. CAMPO, you have the power and responsibility to guide growth towards sustainability as stewards of billions of tax dollars. We're asking for accountability and foresight. We're not asking for miracles. Don't trade short-term convenience for long-term destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Kara, and then Anna, and then Mia. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara King. I'm the mayor of Bee Cave, Texas. As many of you may know, Bee Cave is situated between two state highway roads, Highway 620 and Highway 71. I come today speaking to you about project ID number 51-00209-00, which is the widening of Highway 71. As you may be aware, Highway 71 is a beautiful highway that goes through western Travis County that is on both sides, is surrounded by hills, by canyon lands, by nature preserves, and by protected land. So what that means is there's not a lot of room to build other roads and other ways to get around. We are dependent in western Travis County on Highway 71. And whether we like it or not, it has become a very high-growth corridor. We are expanding and expanding rapidly out that way, and we're losing the capacity of infrastructure to be able to hold all the people and the cars and the traffic. Coming our way in the next few years are two massive developments that are already been approved. Travis Club, which will estimate put another 1,000 to 1,200 cars on the road, and more alarmingly, Thomas Springs Ranch, which will sit on the border of Travis County and Burnett County, will put another 6,000 to 10,000 people on the road. Our 2 lanes in each direction, so a total of 4-way highway, is already at a bottleneck standstill and doesn't have the capacity to hold this number of cars. Recently, in the last couple weeks, this project was moved from the constrained list to the illustrative list. I'm here today to ask you to please put this project back on the constrained list. Personally, I've met with all of our local, state, and elected representatives, and recently I flew to Washington, D.C. at my own expense to meet with our federal representatives to plead our case, to explain why we need this expansion. We need infrastructure help out in Bee Cave. So I'm asking again, please place this back on the constrained list. And one last point, the most immediate need is from the intersection of Highway 71 and 620 to Hamilton Pool Road. The city of Bee Cave is prepared to financially partner with TxDOT to help improve the intersection of 71 and HPR. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Anna, and then Mia, and then Liz. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Anna Geppert. I am a current UT student and lifelong Austin resident, and I am very concerned about the CAMPO 2050 plan. CAMPO claims that highway expansions should only be seen as a last resort, but they comprise most of the projects funded by CAMPO. It's been proven time and time again, like many other people have said here, that highway expansions do not alleviate traffic. In fact, they consistently make it worse. Highway expansions harm our environment, our health, and our mental well-being, not to mention the valuable local businesses displaced. Additionally, expansions have become a major roadway safety concern in our community. Hundreds of Austinites are killed or seriously injured on our local roadways every year. And while fatalities are decreasing on roads managed by the City of Austin, they're increasing on roads managed by TxDOT. This year alone, we've seen several major crashes and a 25% increase in fatalities on Austin roadways this year compared to this time last year. I have seen the impact of excessive road work in Austin throughout my entire life, and it is time to look towards different solutions for transportation in our rapidly expanding city. We should be investing in the transportation infrastructure that actually works and improves the lives of people living here. That is public transport, walkways, and bike lanes, etc. Please reconsider where our valuable federal funding goes and invest in projects that will propel us forward as a community, not push us backward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see. That was Anna, right? Okay, next we have Mia, Liz, and then Miriam.
Hi, I'm Mia, and I am also a student at UT Austin, as well as a member of Rethink 35. I have lived in Austin for my entire life. The social, economic, and environmental issues that highway expansions pose for the future mobility and well-being of the people of Austin should not be ignored. The never-ending road noise, escalating air pollution, and carbon emissions from the increased amount of cars entering and leaving our roadways are not what we deserve to experience for the next 25 years. It's no secret that our city is experiencing exponential growth and will continue to do so we must reconsider our heavy reliance on cars. The CAMPO 2050 Regional Transportation Plan includes reducing the number of highway accidents and protecting the air quality and habitats of especially vulnerable populations in Travis and surrounding counties, but does very little to specify what the exact plans are for physically accelerating alternative modes of transportation. Austin deserves more access to safe, protected bike lanes, sidewalks, and public transit systems. Our city can become far more walkable if the institutions in control of our mobility access make the changes necessary for this to happen. Furthermore, highway expansions, as people have said, such as the Katy Highway, simply do not work due to the induced demand that they will prepare once the projects are completed. We all want less traffic congestion and a livable climate, and the Capital Express North, Central, and South expansion plans, which have been heavily funded by CAMPO, will not let us get there in a timely, equitable manner. A sustainable, secure future can become a reality if we recognize these issues and push for the alternatives that have allowed other U.S. cities to improve the lives of their inhabitants. Please reconsider what the next 25 years will look for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Liz, and then Miriam, and then Adam. Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Liz Schweers. I'm a UT student as well. I'm originally from San Antonio, but I've lived here for 2 years now, and I really love the community that Austin has, and I really do enjoy living here, and I want to live here post-graduation, but I don't want a car. I can't afford a car, and I can't really afford to Uber around everywhere, so I rely completely on public transportation. And even just to come here today, it would have taken me an hour on the bus, so I had to coordinate carpooling to get here. And so in order to stay here in Austin, I really need transportation to be something that my government prioritizes so that I can live here effectively and enjoy a good life. But for me, like, that's a personal choice that I am making not to drive. For a lot of people, such as some people that spoke here today, it's not a choice to not drive. Some people cannot drive for reasons outside of their control, like elderly, people with epilepsy, and other disabilities. And so I really think we should prioritize making sure that everyone has access to the city and everyone feels welcome in the city and not just people who can drive. And so we've talked a lot about safety and the metrics that we use for safety, but I think we should also really consider overall well-being of a city and the ability to connect with each other through public transportation. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Miriam and then Adam.
Good afternoon. As a region, we're facing quite a few transportation challenges. Congestion levels have been increasing. Fatalities and serious injuries recently reached a 10-year high. The amount of driving each person has to do has increased by 30% in just the last 5 years. That is the largest VMT per capita increase in Texas and the 8th largest in the nation. The percentage of people using single occupancy vehicles to get around is higher now than it was in the year 2000. And we are failing to meet almost every single safety target on TxDOT's Road to Zero that y'all were talking about earlier. So we are at a pivotal moment. We're talking about a 25-year plan that's going to determine what direction we're going to go in. And there's only two ways to go from here. Things can get better or things can get worse. We can move in a direction that results in worse congestion, worse pollution, longer commutes, more crashes, more deaths. Or we can start moving in a direction where people have to spend fewer hours a day behind the wheel, where you don't need to drive on a highway to get your groceries, where kids can safely bike to school. So which of these two directions is the Regional Transportation Plan recommending? Well, it's hard to say. The RTP says that we ought to reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita, and it also says that implementing these projects will not do that. It says that we need a greater mix of modes, and it says that implementing the plan will not meaningfully impact mode shift. It says expanding highways should be a last resort, and it involves an additional 3,000 lane miles of highway expansions. We know that there's not a lot that can be changed between now and May with respect to this particular plan, but something in the process is clearly going wrong because the plan is predicted to fail on its own lights. So what we're really asking the board here is to spend some time looking at the planning process so we can refine it, and so the next time we put forward a plan, we can confidently assert that the plan will meet the goals that it sets out for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Adam and then Kevin.
Good afternoon, board members. Adam Greenfield here with Safe Streets Austin. Yesterday was a sad month anniversary. It was a month since that catastrophic, awful crash on I-35 killed 5 people, including 2 children. One of them was an infant. 5 people taken to hospital in critical condition, including 1 child. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows someone who has been killed or seriously injured or injured in some way on a roadway in the CAMPO area. Even getting here today, I think we all undertook a dangerous experience to get here. It is really quite something how casually dangerous it is to move around the CAMPO area, and that's just not good enough. This plan should reflect a new vision for this region, and right now this plan does not reflect a new vision. It reflects the same failed processes and strategies that we've seen again and again and again. However, there is hope, and the hope is all of you, and is the growing community and the growing community of advocates who are supporting you in another vision. It is really quite something to see how inspired and how forward-looking so many of the CAMPO board members are. And we are really excited to work with you to make sure that moving forwards after this plan, that we rethink how we score the projects that make it into these plans, so that we can have projects that give people more choices for how they get around, which improve air quality, which make life safer, and which help connect neighbors to each other and address the loneliness epidemic we see as well in this car-centric paradigm we're in. So thank you very much for your work. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally we have Kevin.
I'm the last one. That's fun. Hey guys, I'm Kevin Shepard. I've lived in Austin. I was born and raised here. I've been here the last 4 years. It was great to come back. How many of you guys have read the Austin Future Climate Report from 2024? Show of hands. This was a joint report put together by the City of Austin and UT. Okay, please read it. It's really important. The Earth right now is hotter than it has been at any other point in human history. Heat waves are getting more frequent and last longer. Hurricanes are getting stronger and wetter. Glaciers are melting faster than expected, and locally the prospects are no better. According to the City of Austin's own 2024 climate projections, our region is on track to see summer temperatures rise by up to 10 degrees by the end of the century. Days over 100 degrees will triple, heat waves will double or even triple in length, and crucially, these models don't account for the urban heat island effect, so in many neighborhoods, the reality is going to be even worse. I want to tell you guys a story about my friend Ryan. Ryan was an Eagle Scout, is an Eagle Scout, I suppose you don't lose that status. And way back in high school, we decided to go on a camping trip. And because he was an Eagle Scout, we put him in charge of building the fire. We wanted to have a bonfire, so he brought an entire can of lighter fluid. And he got the fire started, no problem. But at the end of the night, we wanted to go to bed. We needed to put the fire out. But Ryan still had half a can of lighter fluid left. And he just kept putting more and more and more on because he didn't want to see it go to waste and he was having fun. And we learned a lesson that day, which is that if you want to put the fire out, the first thing you need to do is take the lighter fluid away from Ryan. And similarly, if you want to stop climate change from getting worse, the first thing you need to stop doing is putting more fuel on that fire. You need to stop investing in car infrastructure because it only hurts us and we know it hurts us. You guys have a tremendous amount of power here. You can prioritize public transit investments. All I'm asking is that, especially where you have the density where it makes sense, apply an acid test. Could we use public transit instead, or do we absolutely positively need to throw more fuel on this fire and make it worse?
Thank you.
It's a straightforward choice.
Appreciate it. All right, that is all we had for item number 6. So getting back in order, that takes us now to item number 12, the Executive Director's Report.
Okay.
Go ahead. Unless, did you have anything?
So I actually, Commissioner, we had gotten some comments that Chair Long asked me to address.
Oh, okay, yeah, right, sir.
And that concerns the 2050 plan. So first, sort of to back up, the long-range plan is a federally required document. It is updated every 5 years according to federal law for us to remain in compliance. As part of that plan, we have to do what's called forecasting of population that looks out at least 20 years into the future. We also have to look at employment that looks out at least 20 years into the future. And then one of the other parts of that plan that we must do is called fiscal constraint. And fiscal constraint was added to the statutory language from the federal government in 1991 when the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, also called ICE-T, was passed. The intention of that fiscal constraint language that was added was to make sure that long-range plans were meaningful documents and not wish lists of plans as they had been prior to 1991. So CAMPO performs I'd say one of the most strenuous fiscal constraint analyses in the state as far as MPOs are concerned. We reach out to each of you as local governments. We look at your bond capacity. We look at debt. We look at ability to raise revenue over time to not only cover the construction costs of the projects that you submit to us, but also the ability to operate and maintain those facilities as is required by federal law. We all know that financial forecasts that go beyond 5 years may be prone to some inaccuracies, but we are required to look out at least 25 years on that. Why is the fiscal constraint important? It's important because when you look at the full document of the 2050 draft plan, the only portion that's approved by Federal Highway Administration is the fiscal constraint. It is also important to note that the long-range plan is not a static document. So not only do we update every 5 years in a major sort of way, we also amend the plan twice a year, so a spring amendment cycle and a fall amendment cycle. And those amendments processes are there to make sure that as things happen as we move through the 5-year document, and you as local governments and transit operators and TxDOT develop projects and get them closer to construction, that we can make changes that we need to make in that document to keep it consistent with other regulatory items on the federal side. Also, it's important to note that when the board takes action to adopt a long-range plan, so in this case, when we bring this item back to you next month as an action item for consideration for adoption, as soon as you take an action to adopt that 2050 plan, the 2045 plan is then dead. So we can't go back to previous plans, just like we can't go back to previous transportation improvement programs. That's the way the federal law is structured. So I'm going to talk in just a few minutes about the components of the long-range plan as it stands today. There are several chapters there, and you will hear Will talk through some of that. But there are additional things in that plan document that I don't think everybody's looked at yet, and I will draw your attention in particular to the appendix. In the appendix, you will see a number of sub-regional and regional studies that CAMPO staff has conducted over the last 4 years, going back to at least 2021, and in some cases a little earlier than that. Those plans are meant to be a bottom-up approach where we look at environmental mitigation strategies as part of those sub-regional and regional plans. We also look at multimodal options there, and we also look at safety as part of those activities. And just to give you an example, and we look at Title VI, in addition to having robust public outreach as part of every one of those regional and sub-regional plans. So if you look at that appendix, there's 17 documents listed there currently, ranging from regional transit, transportation demand management, freight, active transportation, and other active transportation studies such as the Bergstrom Spur study we conducted on behalf of the City of Austin. And finally, CAMPO's ongoing corridors program, where we are partnering with our friends at TxDOT to look at major FM/RM roads in this region that are carrying a lot of the traffic today and that we expect to carry more traffic into the future, and look at not only improvements that may be needed on the roadway side of those facilities, but also looking at other options such as transit and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. The appendix even includes a list of studies and documents that CAMPO staff and our consultant looked at to inform our thinking as we started the process of this plan. So we looked at your CIPs, we looked at your comprehensive plans, and we used that information and started to develop the plans. So now on to some of the comments on the draft plan. So several of you have received comments about FM 1826 in Travis and Hayes counties. As you heard today, some folks are asking for acceleration on the Hayes side, and some folks are asking for the project to be removed from the draft document on the Travis County portion of the project. And I just bring this up to say that it has been the practice of this body in the past, if you're going to change or remove a project that a sponsor submitted, that first that sponsor is asked what they think and are they in agreement with the potential action to take place. Having said that, the plan document is your document as the legal entity of CAMPO, and you can choose to change it if you choose to do so. So some of you may also have received comments suggesting that CAMPO revert back to approaches used by CAMPO staff to develop the 2035 plan that was done in the early 2000s. one of those approaches that was used when that plan was developed, and it's referenced in some of those comments, was about regional activity centers as they were laid out in the now defunct Envision Central Texas document. So if you look at Appendix Q of the 2050 draft plan, you will see that the concept of regional activity centers are still in the CAMPO travel demand model to this day. We did not remove them. And you will see the analysis and how it was conducted for this long-range plan. You've also seen comments suggesting that the project selection criteria needs to be updated. Many of the comments, as we saw them and interpreted what was written, seem to reference changing, because they use the date of 2017 as the last update, seem to reference the Transportation Improvement Program and not the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Are the two linked? Yes. The Transportation Improvement Program is a subset of the long-range plan. It's the first 5 years of that document, but the criteria cannot be the same, because what happens is when you introduce a project in the long-range plan, it is still many times in the conceptual stages of development. As you get into the Transportation Improvement Program, that project has to be fully developed, and you have to have identified funding. You do not have to have identified funding to be included in the long-range plan. And while I'm on that subject, I want to make sure everybody understands, when you take action on the 2050 draft plan, you are not allocating funding to projects. Funding is only allocated to projects in the Transportation Improvement Program. So while we are doing fiscal constraint as part of that, you're not allocating money. Also, we've been told that some of the criteria ought to be changed. When we started the 2050 plan development in 2021, early on in that process, we brought the criteria back to this body and asked what you thought about the criteria and was it still working, and we got an affirmative response, and so we moved forward.
I'm sorry, when was that? When did we have that conversation?
I'd have to look at the date, and Will, I thought you had a list.
2021, I think. Is that?
So last year, we discussed the project call at May board and the results of the project call process in September, including goals and objectives and criteria.
So when would be the next appropriate time that we can make adjustments to the criteria?
It would be what, 5 years from now when we update again.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, not 5 years. It will be soon as we start the new plan. We finish one plan, we start the other one, so maybe a year.
So I want to clarify. Are you talking about the project call or the criteria to get a project into the plan?
The criteria to get projects in the RTP.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to clarify that.
So the earliest would be probably about a year and a half from now when we start the next one?
In 2026. So we
Yes.
adopt for 2050, and then after we adopt the 2050 RTP, we can then discuss adjustments to the criteria.
Because usually as soon as we finish one, we have to start the other one in order to make the deadlines.
Okay.
Can you help me understand the difference between the project call that we did last year and then the criteria for the 5-year update that we?
So there were 2 project calls last year. One was for the long-range plan, this draft document that we're talking about now. But then there's also a call that's still pending right now for transportation alternatives funding, federal funding, and on carbon reduction program federal funding. So the carbon reduction and the transportation alternatives funding, that action is coming to you for consideration in June of this year.
So maybe the easiest way to clarify is when we do a project call, that's awarding funding. When we are having criteria to put it in a plan, that's getting it into the plan, but that's not awarding funding. So.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Chair, I've got a...
Just a second, let Ashby finish.
Let me make sure I've covered everything. I'm going to stop, Chair.
Okay. And then I jumped past Will. He's got a little bit of a presentation that may answer some questions, so let him do that, and then we can, if we have questions after that.
Thank you. Will Liska, Regional Planning Manager for CAMPO. This is a presentation on the draft RTP and changes to be integrated into the final draft.
The RTP must be adopted no later than May 2025 to remain in compliance with federal rules. Ashby already mentioned a lot of these things, but unlike the TIP, the RTP does not allocate state or federal funds to listed project. However, the RTP does include an analysis of fiscal constraint and develops a list of regionally significant transportation projects that can be reasonably expected to be funded over the life of the plan. This list of constrained projects includes projects likely to be funded through local means as well as through state or federal funding sources. Before we dive in, I also want to note the RTP is built upon local plans developed by member agencies as well as regional and sub-regional plans and studies developed by CAMPO. So it's really a bottom-up process. CAMPO doesn't build or operate infrastructure, so we rely on member agencies to submit and sponsor projects to be considered for the plan. The presentation today on the draft final RTP will cover the following topics: a timeline of the model development process and plan development process, a review of the process used for fiscal constraint and project prioritization, pending updates to the plan based on comments received, and next steps in the process. I'm going to review a timeline of major steps in the development of the 2050 travel demand model and demographics. This process spanned almost 2 years. Included in this was a 12-month process of developing and refining the population and employment forecasts for the model, which had 3 rounds of feedback and adjustment from CAMPO's Technical Advisory Committee. In addition to the TAC, a stakeholder group, including CAMPO member agency staff and chambers of commerce, was invited to provide feedback throughout the process. During model development, the following presentations and discussions to the TAC occurred. In September 2021, we presented a comparison of the forecasts assumed for the previous 2045 RTP to new data available from the 2020 census. In June 2022, we discussed modeling considerations related to COVID-19 travel trends. Ultimately, the modeling consultant, travel demand model working group, and TAC did not recommend any changes to the forecasting methodology through this process. At the meeting, we also discussed the county population control totals provided by the State Demographic Center, which were the foundation of the 2050 demographic forecasts. In January 23, we provided TAC with a map viewer to review the initial first run of the Urban Sim demographic model and invited them to provide feedback on the distribution of people and jobs. In February 2023, we provided a summary of the first round of demographic review from the TAC and the comments that were received from the TAC. In April 2023, we summarized the 2 additional rounds of demographic review that occurred in collaboration with TAC members. Finally, in October 2023, we presented preliminary model results and the results of a QA/QC review performed by both TxDOT and the Texas Transportation Institute, or TTI. Next, I'll cover major milestones in the development of the 2050 RTP.
Can I ask one question while interrupting?
Yes,
I just want to be clear. You said that we utilized the same entity that we had previously regarding our modeling, regarding forecasting of population. Is that correct? That's correct. What was the name of that entity again?
The name of the program?
Yeah.
Urban Sim.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. The plan document began development in early 2024. We first visited TAC in February 2024, discussing the plan purpose and process and getting folks ready to participate in the RTP project call. From March to May of 24, we met with project sponsors to collaborate on which projects in the 2045 RTP needed to be considered for the 2050 RTP project list. At May 2024 TAC and TPB, we discussed the plan purpose and process again and presented the goals, objectives, and evaluation criteria for the RTP project call process. From June to August, the project call was open for project sponsors to submit applications to CAMPO. At September TAC and October TPB, we provided an overview of the various projects received through the project call and the process by which projects seeking constraint via state and federal funding would be prioritized. From October to November, CAMPO conducted the first round of public outreach, including online and in-person meeting options. Then at October TAC, we presented the revenue estimation methodology for the fiscal constraint analysis, and in the late fall, we presented the revenue estimation results to both the TAC and the board. In December and January of this year, CAMPO worked to finalize project prioritization scores for projects seeking constraint through state and federal funding.
After this, we provided submitting agencies their draft fiscally constrained project lists for comment. Submitting agencies were then given the opportunity to prioritize their remaining local funding. The draft 2050 RTP incorporated this feedback and was presented to the TAC in January and to the board in February. And most recently in March, we presented to the TAC on comments received for the draft RTP and expected updates from those comments. I also want to note here that the second round of public outreach for the RTP, which will be discussed a little bit later in this presentation, has been open since February and closes out tomorrow. Next, I'm briefly going to turn things over to Christina Whitfield with Kimley Horn to discuss the revenue estimation methodology for the plan and how we arrived at the fiscally constrained project list.
Awesome, thank you, Will. As you guys have seen at some of your prior meetings, and as Ashby and Will have done a really good job teeing up, as we started to arrive at the fiscal constraint for the 2050 RTP, we took a couple of critical steps. One of that started with all of your jurisdictions submitting the projects that they wanted to be considered to be included in the 2050 RTP. We received a little over 1,000 project submittals from over 29 jurisdictions and agency partners for inclusion in this plan. With those projects, as we started the fiscal constraint, once we had our revenues prepared, we started with those projects that you guys are already committed to via your TIP processes, and we've started to remove those from the top, kind of shaving off those commitments that we've already made. And then we looked at the projects that were submitted as locally funded. Important to note here, these locally funded projects are not scored through the traditional MPO prioritization process, but if at any point one of our member jurisdictions do want to seek federal or state funding for those in lieu of the local funding that was established in the 2050 RTP, you can work with CAMPO staff to go through that prioritization process and work through the amendment process for the RTP. Once we moved through those TIP and local priorities, we started to look at the remaining projects that were seeking federal and state funding. We ranked those projects based on their MPO prioritization score. And the way I like to think about this, it's balancing the checkbook. We just went down the rank of the highest priority projects until we ran out of money and got as close to zero as we could. Using that, we shared out the results with all of our member jurisdictions and agency partners and received feedback. At that point, we amended some of the draft project listings, and Will go into a lot more detail about some of those amendments and modifications we've made since the drafts that were shared out with each of your organizations.
Thank you, Christina. Next, I'm going to discuss the comments that have been received from the TAC and CAMPO member agency staff since the opening of the draft RTP comment period. We had staff comments from the agencies listed on this slide, and I'm going to summarize the comments received and our proposed updates over based on these comments. I want to note the details of these proposed updates as they relate to the projects are documented in attachment A of the agenda material background paper. So any detailed information about the updates to the project list are contained within that attachment. TxDOT staff provided several comments on the draft project list in February and March. TxDOT reviewed all on-system projects submitted by local sponsors to determine their concurrence with those projects. CAMPO staff reached out to local sponsors to discuss the results of this review and recommended one update to the constrained project list based on these conversations. Through this process, CAMPO staff also identified 3 duplicate projects submitted to the plan, both by TxDOT and local agencies. From this, we worked with TxDOT and the local agencies, which included Georgetown and Cedar Park on this list, to determine which projects to maintain. Ultimately, we decided to maintain the local projects. Finally, TxDOT requested that we move the SH71 improvements project from Silvermine Drive to the Blanco County line from the constrained list to the illustrative list. They cited that this project had an indefinite timeline for development. The Austin Transportation and Public Works Department provided several comments to CAMPO on policies, plan policies and the plan process. Detailed responses from CAMPO staff were provided back to TPW. CARTS requested to add a discussion of projects completed throughout the region in the 5 years since the 2045 RTP was passed. This section will be added to the final document. I've already covered the Cedar Park and Georgetown updates. Pflugerville requested the removal of a study listed by TxDOT that had already been completed with local resources, and TxDOT agreed to remove this listing. Travis County had specific comments on both the plan text and project list, and CAMPO will incorporate all the Travis County comments into the final plan. We also added several locally funded Travis County projects that were missing from the draft project list. I'll note that this list of comments was only through the middle of last week. Since then, we received a joint comment from Williamson County and Hutto. Those agencies requested 4 projects representing a new north-south arterial east of Hutto to be incorporated into the constrained project list using 100% local funding. Pending project list updates. As previously mentioned, pending updates to the constrained project list are detailed in attachment A of the agenda item background paper. After the duplicate projects were removed and the SH71 project was transferred to the illustrative list, this freed up some additional state and federal fiscal capacity. We've prioritized 2 additional projects for the constrained list based on this additional capacity. The RM 1826 improvements in Hayes County from SH45 to RM 150, and the SH29 improvements in Williamson County from Southwest Bypass to Butler Farms Boulevard. Updates to the demand model are in progress based on these pending revisions to the project list. Next, I'm going to walk through how the constrained project list is broken down in terms of regional funding capacity. As a reminder before I dive in, just because a project is constrained does not mean that it is funded for implementation. Only projects listed in the TIP or those listed in local capital improvement programs are funded. Being listed in the constrained project list does not obligate funding, federal or otherwise, to a project. All non-local constrained projects outside of the TIP will still need to go through the process of applying for funding through CAMPO or other state or federal programs to be considered for funding, considered funded. At the point of funding, they will be amended into the TIP. The RTP project list is intended to include all regionally significant projects, both in the TIP and reasonably expected to be funded through the 2050 horizon year of the plan, be it through local funding sources, state or federal. The pie chart on the left side of the slide shows the fiscal constraint breakdown for all projects in the constrained list, which includes TIP, local projects, and projects needing some sort of state or federal funds for implementation. Roughly 630 projects are constrained as part of the RTP, worth a total of approximately $49.3 billion. The pie chart on the right side shows the constraint breakdown for the RTP once projects in the TIP and 100% locally funded projects are removed. TIP funding is prioritized through a separate process in the RTP, and CAMPO does not have a say in prioritizing how local dollars are spent. This leaves the list of projects that received a prioritization score from CAMPO and were prioritized for constraint through expected state and federal funding capacity.
Will, just a quick question. So if I just want to confirm, we're kind of understanding it right. So looking at how wide the active transportation slice is on the constrained project chart, and then how narrow it is on the excluding TIP and local, kind of demonstrates that like the vast majority of active transportation projects are either locally funded or on the TIP right now, and therefore getting done in the next few years, as opposed to the next 25?
Yes, that's correct. It demonstrates, and I was getting to this point that.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry.
It's completely fine. So this list includes, about 160 projects worth about $23.2 billion, and I want to note that every transit, active, ITS, and TDM project submitted to CAMPO for inclusion on the constrained list via state and federal funds was ultimately prioritized and placed on the constrained list. Projects in these categories that appear on the illustrative list are there because the submitting project sponsor asked for them to be on the illustrative list and did not apply for the constrained list. On the next slide, I'm showing one additional breakdown of the projects that CAMPO prioritized for constraint via state and federal funds. On the left side is the constrained projects excluding TIP and local by percentage of project cost in each of CAMPO's 6 counties. And for reference on the right side, we're also showing a pie chart with the regional population breakdown via the 2020 census. This shows that distribution of projects prioritized by the RTP for state and federal funding pretty closely reflects the distribution of regional population.
That's pretty good.
Pretty close. One other thing I'd like to cover here before handing things over to Joyce to talk about public outreach is environmental considerations. We received several comments from agency staff, board members, and the public about how environmental considerations and mitigations are discussed in the RTP. CAMPO's project call for the RTP included an evaluation criteria related to environmental factors. Projects were required to describe how their project will address environmental factors such as soil plasticity, aquifers, floodplains, protected lands, and cultural resources. CAMPO also provided project sponsors with maps containing these environmental factors to guide their process. The text of the RTP will be updated to better describe this process. Additionally, a list of mitigation strategies that project sponsors should consider as they develop their own project-level environmental studies will be added to the RTP. So now I'm going to turn things over to Joyce Myers to talk about community outreach.
Thank you, Will. So as was mentioned, we're currently in the second round of outreach for the 2050 RTP. The first round was held in the fall last year. We opened the second round in mid-February, and it closes for public comments tomorrow. So we've been doing several outreach methods for people to be able to complete a survey or submit comments. There is an online open house that's been available for the 2-month period. We've done in-person events and open houses, and I'll give you a little more details of where those have been held in a moment. We've also allowed comments and surveys by mail. We've mailed some material as well as some surveys with postage paid envelopes to a couple of people that have requested those, and we are allowing phone comments, voicemail comments to be included. That was a practice that we started for the last RTP, the second round that was held in 2020. It's a practice that has just kind of opened up other options for people to be able to comment, and so we decided to keep that option as well. We've had public events in all 6 counties. There's been at least 2 events. There have been 3 public events in Travis County, and then the public hearing here today. So this is the location of the events that we've held. Just to give you a sample, we were at the Bluebonnet Festival in Burnett this past weekend, as well as the Books and Bees Festival. Thank you, Mayor King, for your staff hosting us at that great community event. We had an open house prior to this meeting. You'll see all of the material in the back, as well as the surveys. We were able to be in Pflugerville, Smithville at a community health fair. So we've made our way around the region. As of last week, early last week, we had about 500 surveys completed and about 150 email comments. And just a reminder that the board will receive all of the survey and email responses prior to the May meeting, so you will have an opportunity to review those before you take action at the May meeting. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Will.
Thanks, Joyce. I just want to wrap things up with a summary of our next steps. As Joyce mentioned, the deadline for public comment is tomorrow, April 15th. At the April 28th TAC, we will be presenting the final draft RTP for recommendation. And finally, we'll return to the board on May 12th for discussion and action on the 2050 RTP. Thank you. For that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Will. Any questions? Councilmember?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. It was great to see that there was an update with the plan around the environmental information. But I just had 2 quick questions. I understand the RTP criteria can't be updated right now, but why can't we look at the TIP scoring criteria and even the next call for projects to better balance our funding kind of across different models?
So the current TIP that we were under was passed last fall, and there are projects in the pipeline that have been relying on that criteria being where it is. Having said that, that TIP is, how often do we do the TIP run? Is it every 2 years now? So the next opportunity for that, probably the conversation for that, I would suggest would start next year about changing the criteria for the next one.
Got it. And then I'm not sure who to ask the question to, but I know someone's going to answer it. My other question, when would the appropriate time be to update the scoring criteria? Would that be in
For which document, I'm sorry?
When would the appropriate time be to update the scoring criteria? You had said next
For the long-range plan or for the transportation improvement program?
For the long-range plan.
Next year as well, because we start working on that 4 years out.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So my question, I guess, is for staff, and it's about the safety goals in the RTP, and in particular, whether it's the policy of this board to utilize TxDOT's Road to Zero safety approach, or in the prior RTP 2045, we used Vision Zero, which is the program that the City of Austin uses. And currently in the draft, both are referenced. And so it starts out with one and then it goes to another. But given the context we're in, I want to really emphasize this, given the major crashes on I-35, including some that are in my city council district. Obviously, it's a huge issue of public concern. And my understanding is that both Road to Zero and Vision Zero emphasize design, structural aspects for safety, whereas Road to Zero also emphasizes maybe enforcement programs. And so, I just want to make sure that we're emphasizing safe systems as a part of the RTP. And I guess I wanted to ask if it's okay with the board and staff that if we could include both in the 2050 RTP, if it could say Road to Zero and Vision Zero, that way it's kind of a belt and suspenders approach, just to make clear to the public that we're really emphasizing safe design as our part of our roadway construction.
Thank you, Council Member. So in terms of the current draft 2050 document, we did go back and check after we received some comments, and you are correct that there are references to Vision Zero, and many of them are referencing either a City of Austin document or something else, but there was a Vision Zero reference that was in the criteria that was sent out. That should have been caught and should have been changed per the instructions we had gotten from the board before, and so I will apologize for that oversight. Having said that, the board can choose to make reference to both things. One thing I do want to say is on as far as Road to Zero program is concerned, so there is a Texas safety, statewide safety committee. I sit on that committee. I'm the only MPO director in the state that is on that committee. So also on the committee is the chief engineer for TxDOT, two of TxDOT's transportation commissioners, also the head of the safety division for TxDOT. Then there are two district representatives on there as well. So the Road to Zero is a very holistic and comprehensive program. So it is has as much emphasis on enforcement, on education, on I forget what the 4E stands for. Engineering. Thank you. It has as much weight on that as it does on the other factors. So I would say is very balanced, and TxDOT has been intentional about that. If you look at TxDOT's website, but also look at some of the things they've been doing lately, there's a lot of campaigns that have either happened recently or still in progress in terms of education. I will also say to you, we have a great partnership with our Austin district for TxDOT, and every month there is a review of accidents and/or fatalities in the region. Most of our issues are not engineering, they're behavioral issues. We're seeing over and over folks not wearing seatbelts, folks greatly exceeding the speed limit, folks driving while either under the influence or drunk, and sometimes all of the above. So we're seeing a lot of behavioral issues. I'm not telling you that there's not engineering things that we can do. There are engineering improvements that can be made. And TxDOT generally has a policy when they go out and start to look at improvements to a roadway, whether it's expansion or something else, they will address the safety issues as they're going forward. But they don't just wait until then. There's also what's called the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and that program is funded directly out of TxDOT, and it comes from their safety division office, the districts get to submit projects on system for that. And that's an opportunity there as well to address some of the on system.
So Ashby, to his point, is it possible for staff to just send us the two documents so we can juxtapose them, see them for
Absolutely.
ourselves, and then we can have that conversation?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Anybody else besides Mayor Pro Tem?
Oh, sorry, you saw her.
Go ahead.
Quick question. How will the item be posted on the agenda for May? I know that there's interest in bringing forward amendments for consideration as well as direction on the RTP item. Do you know what the language will be?
I'll give you a rough guess for right now, and it will be discussed and take appropriate action, so it kind of leaves you plenty of wiggle room.
Very good. I just want to, give a heads up for all of our board members here that we will be bringing forward some amendments and direction for consideration of our policy planning board. And so I just ask that the posting language be broad enough to include those potential actions. Thank you.
Agreed.
Appreciate
I'd like
that.
to see that as well.
Yeah, the only thing that I ask, because it seems like this is an issue every year, y'all do not wait until the last minute to go and present this stuff, so everyone's cognizant of this stuff. I would say, what's a good date that you would like if folks are going to bring up some amendments and comments for you, Ashby? Because isn't it already? It's the 14th. Yeah.
Yes, the 12th will be here before we know it. So if we could have something by the 28th of this month, because the first mail out is May 5th.
Okay. April 28th. April 28th. Okay. You're so wrong. Councilmember Lane.
Thank you. So I will also agree that I believe that I will be bringing forward some additional actions in that next meeting, and I'll continue to try to learn in between now and then. But I did want to comment on some of the themes that I've observed in the public comment and here. And I'll first say, it's our current criteria that got us where we are right now. There's been a lot of growth going on in the region, and a lot of that has been happening in these areas that are maybe have Austin addresses, but are far enough outside of central Austin that they haven't been captured by the transportation networks. And they also include this mix of ETJ areas and all these different jurisdictions that allow them to fall through the cracks. And these are the kinds of areas that people here were commenting on today from Hayes County and over to Round Rock, but I didn't hear anyone commenting for the areas that I represent, the 183 corridor, Palmer Lane, Williamson County, in these areas of high growth, lots of accidents, and I am finding my way here. I myself am kind of in between Austin and the lower density areas, but I really see this area as a place that the regional body is the one who can provide leadership, who can help us to bring buckets of money together that maybe there hasn't been as much investment from agencies like Cap Metro or from the city of Austin in these outlying areas of the city where it's suburban and it transitions into county or ETJ. And one of the things that I observed when I was looking through the preliminary information is, and also here in public comment, so many comments about a need for active transportation to bridge that gap before public transit has come in, when people are finding themselves needing to walk and bike if they can't afford a car, they've been displaced for financial reasons, or they're raising a family where it's more affordable. We haven't seen those active transportation projects up here in these areas that have had a lot of growth and density, have been primarily served by TxDOT roadways, and will not become safer for these people trying to get where they need to go without leadership from a regional body just like this one. And so I'm gonna go back to where I started. It's our long-range criteria that got us where we are right now, which is a lot of unmet needs in this transitional area. And I really hope, I'm saying this with the right tone as well, I really hoped that we can come together to solve some of these problems for our community, because to the extent that we don't solve them in these transitional areas, it impacts everyone farther out if we expand Palmer Lane where it's Ronald Reagan Boulevard up in the Cedar Park area, but we don't handle what's available on Palmer that connects to Austin, it's going to get less safe, and it's not going to solve congestion. So I'm definitely thinking about criteria. I did want to also clarify, so I understand what the thinking is on criteria for the long-range planning, but what about when is the opportunity for updating criteria for the call for projects?
For the transportation improvement program, that would also be next year, because we update on a 2-year cycle for that one.
Okay, so I'm super concerned because a lot of development has gone in already that isn't being addressed by current criteria, so then it just gets farther and farther out. So thank you.
So partial response on criteria. I think the criteria can certainly be reviewed again for potential improvements to the criteria. But I do want to make sure folks understand I can't score what I don't receive in a submittal. So if these are things that are priorities, you as local governments, you have to submit them to us for potential criteria and scoring.
And just to be clear, the reason why he brought that up was that a couple years ago, there were some things that were being brought up that weren't necessarily being brought up by y'all's staff. And I'm not going to say what entities. Yeah. And it was kind of like, wait, okay, you need to, don't put the elected official out there saying this stuff if you haven't done anything specifically and actually submitted that information for that to be reviewed and taken into consideration in the first place.
Great, thank you. I'll make this super quick. I really appreciate a lot of the discussion that's happened here today. I appreciate the speakers who came. A lot of folks who are constituents of District 9, which is what I represent on the Austin City Council, which is Central Austin. It has the UT, it has neighborhoods like Cherrywood and Hancock that are going to be affected with all these projects that are happening, in the city and in the region. And I really do believe it's our moral obligation to do this right. So like I said, I appreciate the conversation that's taking place. I know some folks have highlighted bringing forward amendments, I think on April 28th. I think that's the date that we said. I don't know if we want to confirm if it's April 28th or it's April 38th. I think it's really important, we do this right. And when we come up with policy, we make sure that we put people at the forefront of that. So thank you.
Yes, Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. This comment's really addressed to the people who join us. I want to make sure all of you know that that CAMPO does provide vouchers for your transportation needs in order to get here. So several of you had concerns about difficulty getting here, either from transit or particularly, you'll note at the head of our agenda, and it's also available on the website there. Anyone who's disabled can get it from home. So please, we really appreciate you joining us. I know it probably feels like you're giving comments and we're like, there's a stone wall, but like we're in listening mode. We want to make sure we get to everybody. But we love having you here. And so take advantage of those resources because we want to make sure everybody, and I mean everybody, can get here.
Thank you for bringing that, Mayor. I feel like I have a whole list of comments from everything that was conveyed today. But one of the top ones is I feel like we do this annually. We say, hey, if you want to come here, and I know there's like 3 people in line watching right now, but we have vouchers, and we made that explicitly several years ago that it's not going to be a barrier. We will make sure that we pay to make sure that you're here and take care of you for that because your voice is important and essential in this whole conversation. We serve you. It's not the other way around. So we want to get your information feedback on the things that we're doing here. Additionally speaking, I want to say how much I appreciated hearing all the comments and debate and conversation here on the dais today because that's what we need I was going to appropriate to Zoe, but I'll say it to Krista instead. We need to talk to our partners. We need to have an honest conversation with our partners because it's not necessarily, we can get the plan together, that all we want, but if our partners are not rowing in the same direction and would like for things to be done that way, it's a completely different conversation. I empathize with you tremendously, and you're sitting right next to someone right now who I've had conversation with numerous years about saying, what are we doing regarding, public transit and how it's funded and what we look at and how we go about these things, because it's a real issue, and honestly, in a lot of ways, it's unsustainable for what we're trying to do if we're trying to truly make sure this is a regional pathway. I know I've heard over and over again from Cap Metro that they exactly want that, and they're in the same vein with that, but we've got to help how we support them and help ameliorate that to make that a difference. Additionally speaking, when we're talking about some of these other areas, I appreciate it, Commissioner Thoreau, what you talked about, your area and the funding and what happens with the other aspects. We were having that conversation earlier. That's key, because it's not just, and again, I think we get caught up. I thought that pie was really good because I think it really did represent our entities well, but what happens in your neck of the woods is just as important as to what happens in Cedar Park, or what happens in Round Rock, or what happens in Bastrop. And I think we've hopefully demonstrated that through the years too, that, hey, this is a true partnership in how we operate. We're not some unicorn area that needs to go ahead and do things differently, but we truly need to go ahead and find better ways to actually utilize together. And I really do appreciate this board and this comments on that. With that said, any other comments? Okay, I call this meeting closed at 4:04 p.m. Longhorns are #1 in baseball and softball. Hook 'em.